Has anyone ever heard of something called global warming? Global warming, every time you pick up the paper, there's something new. California, the rate of tree death will double in the next 15 years. If the ocean just rises 2 feet, southern Florida will become a tidal salt marsh at the estimated cost of, maybe $5 trillion as we move out all those people out and have abandoned high-rises sticking out of the tide. So we do not have a lot of long-term vested interest in sinking billions of dollars worth of new infrastructure to national gas, or of trashing large parts of the environment, for the place of this fuel. Because, well, natural gas is cleaner than coal and oil. It is dirtier than any green fuel. It is still carbon combustion. Now, let me give you just one number. When you add up the desire of the world to continue to grow as wealthy as Americans, when you add up some of the population figures we heard from Chairman Edgar, we have to reduce the amount of carbon combustion related to the production of unit wealth and per capita by 90% over the next 30 years. Those are very simple, straightforward numbers. That the idea that we are going to spawn a new boom in dependency at the cost of the upstate landscape and our water resources, somebody is not reading the papers. Somebody is not, looking at what is going on. There's a role in it for natural gas in the future, but it is a small one. It does not compare to energy conservation. And why we would sink billions of dollars in a fuel that we should be racing as fast as we can to get out of is beyond me. Too little, too late. Someone said these are the saddest words in human existence. We don't have a lot of time. We cannot afford to make mistakes like essentially trashing the environment and subsidizing this for the sake of cheap gas. We don't need cheap gas. We need truly priced gas. The problem with green energy is not that it's too expensive, but the existing energies are too cheap because they externalize this kind of environmental costs. Let me close by addressing very briefly some of the next steps we heard the Assemblyman talk about. First of all, I want you to be clear with your own checklist what the threat the gas is. You've heard a lot about hydrofracking, and I think one or two technical details would be helpful. Hydrofracking is a combination of oil that uses sand to force its way into the shale. But if you, not oil, it's water. But if you just put sand in water, what happens? It just sinks to the bottom. They need something to keep the sand in solution. That's why they're using all of these chemicals, like diesel oil, because they have the right specific gravity to hold the sand in the solution so it can grind this stuff through. And why do they use things like diesel oil? Because it's the cheapest stuff they can get their hands on. There have been rumors that they're using essentially toxic waste that they're supposed to be properly disposing of under RCRA. I guess the enforcement issue the Assemblyman was talking so clearly about. 4 ways this stuff will trash the environment. It gets left underground and moves. It gets spilled, and it has to be disposed of. That's the 3 ways the material can destroy the environment, particularly water resources. Then there's the 4th thing, which is just the general level of landscape disruption. One drilling rig disrupts 25 acres of land. Clear cuts 5 and it trashes the related 20. Just imagine if you had, in terms of if you just had 1 rig for every 120 acres of the watershed, you'd have 16,000 rigs in the watershed. The 16,000 rigs with soil compaction runoff is going to absolutely guarantee that we will have to filter that watershed. All this hydrofracking will absolutely guarantee if it takes place in the watershed. If it takes place in the Delaware River Basin, we will have other New York communities in Philadelphia on the hook. If it takes place near Binghamton, we will be polluting the sole source aquifer. Why? You must understand this very precisely. This stuff does not biodegrade. Once it's in the environment, it never gets out of it. Some of it may wash out to sea if it's in the water. Some of it may sink into the sediments, all of PCBs in the Hudson River. But the only way to protect the environment from this stuff is to keep it out of the environment. QED, simple as that. Now, in terms of this environmental impact statement, it's very important you and your leaders and organizations like the Sierra Club track it. Watch for three things. First of all, does it talk about alternatives? If it doesn't talk about alternatives, I can guarantee you the fix is it. 2, does it talk about the economics of green energy versus the economics of externalizing costs? And 3, does it honestly measure the externalized costs of this kind of disruption? Does it honestly look at the risk that as this stuff stays in the ground, maybe it won't pollute anything the first year, but it'll be there forever. And 20, 50, 100 years from now, we may be drinking it. If it looks at those three things legitimately, then we may have a legitimate process. If it doesn't, it's going to have to be fought. One final thing I would like to say, and then because we want to have room for questions, I want to go back to what Congressman Edgar said, about your own leaders. The greatest environmentalist I ever knew was a person named David Brower, who was the arch-druid of legend, of New Yorker fame. Brower and I worked on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline together, way back when. I was about the age he was when he became a minister. And one of the things working on the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline will convince you is never trust anything the energy industry says. But Brower had this great thing, and I've been where you've sat before, because I got my career started in this as a volunteer for the New York Audubon Society, which is start. Volunteers, public citizens are always intimidated by the scope of these issues. They're always intimidated by the ability of people like myself to toss around information, with a great deal of facility. But what's really even more important than that is your common sense instincts. And what's really more important than that is, even if all of you are not sitting down with the governor to negotiate, you're helping to create a climate of opinion. And you're helping to create a sense that these things matter. It will be very important for the Sierra Club, going to what I said about the fact that this is the most important issue, not to make any compromises with the political system about it. There's got to be, the Sierra Club must make it clear that where we have friends, they're to be supported, where we have people who don't get it, then we must do some things different. I personally cannot imagine that either the mayor or the governor of the city of New York would ultimately be so irresponsible, so short-sighted, so deluded, as to allow these things to happen in places like the New York City watershed. But we've also seen, Bernie Madoff, if I may, some seemingly incomprehensible things. And we must hope for the best and work for the best while preparing for the worst. The natural gas, and you should not think, when we close with this comment, that it is your fault, as the natural gas industry will try and pretend. That you're standing in the way of cheap energy or energy independence. They're the people who are the obstacle. They can do this sustainably. They can accept the fact that there's significant areas they can't go into, that they must spend money on having a watertight, escape-free process. If they choose not to accept the challenge of sustainability, they choose not to follow their own green advertising, then you're not at fault. They are. You have faced the challenge of leadership and met it. They have failed it. They've met it. They have looked at it and failed. Good luck, everybody. As I say, we could not have a more important environmental issue or a more important resource to be working with.